The first time I heard the bell, it wasn't a sound, it was pressure, and it rang my bell. I was there, and I felt the tightening of the air in that concrete chamber under a Silesian hill. It felt like the moment before lightning strikes, when your hair stands on end and your teeth taste the metal. I stood there in stolen boots and an SS technician's gray uniform, clipboard under my arm, watching while a machine shaped like a bell, approximately 9 to 12 feet high and 6 to 9 feet wide, swayed on gimbals attached to concrete anchors, like the men who stared in disbelief at it.
Begin the cycle.
A red lamp would enlighten the room as the Polish scientists under Weiss's control pressed relays. And the bell, top secret, would move. The process of activation and deactivation was repeated many times. Then the scientist would write in books, noting the outcomes. I watched and reported their actions based on what I saw. Die Glocke, the Poles whispered. The bell. It was not a bell, not in function, but there is no way to describe its purpose. The housing was bell-shaped, yes, a flared lower lip, a round-shouldered dome, dull metal the color of old pewter. Every seam appeared sealed and smooth. There were no windows. There were no handles, only the cables and the lines that fed an unnatural machine. Yet, a handful of operators could fit inside it. Access would likely be via a hatch requiring a ladder due to its bell-shaped design. My name then was Dieter Kohl. On paper, I'd come from a factory near Dresden. In my bones, I was Daniel Keene, OSS, farm boy from outside Tulare, catcher for a high school team that never made it past regionals. The son of a carpenter who taught me patience by letting me run lumber until I discovered some small amount of wisdom to help me through the world. I had joined before the war, and I'd spent a year in Germany, besieging the language until the consonants felt like mine, and the vowels flowed from the top of my mouth. I'd learned to look past every mirror. I was sure of myself. The pressure built up in the air from within that machine. Needles began to move in a dance of aggression, guided by highly technical sensors on the scientists' panels, as the bell actions became observable. The two canisters, what they called Zerum Whisk, were filled with a substance thick as syrup and guarded like an altar. The canister filled with this sludge was slung inside on a ring that looked too delicate for what it held. Then, something from within the canisters would glow, not light exactly, but an impression of light, the way you can feel a candle through closed eyes.
Subjects.
Then two prisoners were brought forward in their paper shirts and wooden shoes, heads recently shaved, numbers black on their forearms, eyes already knowing too much. I registered them the way I registered everything. Height, weight, injuries, the small calluses that told you what a man had done before war made all men the same. One had hands like a mason. The other had a violinist's fingers. I do not know why I thought that. Perhaps it was a premonition of what was to be discovered after the war.
You see the curvature? That is the field. Now step precisely there.
The prisoners were herded and guided to painted marks. As the bell began to hum once more, the pressure became a second skin. Papers on my clipboard lifted minutely. A glass rod hissed against the wall as if the temperature were boiling and freezing at once. I never told anyone what happened next, because I didn't know how to describe it, without sounding like a liar or a believer. The two prisoners didn't disappear. The word vanish is more accurate. They were misaligned. It was as if the room had blinked, and the men had not blinked with it. Their outlines lagged. Their bodies tried to recall their positions. One screamed once, then not at all. The other opened his mouth and wept without a sound. When the power cycled down, I was hit with a smell I will never name aloud because it would make it too real.
Again, two more subjects, longer.
I left the clipboard on a silver metal cart and went out for some fresh air. I crossed the courtyard of the Wenceslaus complex away from the hinge with a slow, ordinary cant of a man who looked forward to escape. I kept walking when the soup bell rang. In an alcove behind the generator shed, I wrote a single sentence in a grease pencil under a lintel. The bell works. I put my hand on the rough concrete the way we put a hand on a coffin as I hid that secret, and wondered if it mattered that I was there to see it. At night, in my bunk, with the stink of men and the sharpness of sweaty alcohol in my nose, I prayed, which was a thing I had not done since my father's funeral. I did not pray for the bell to break. I prayed for the thing in me that wanted to fail to hold, because if it didn't, I would walk into Vice's office with a wrench and a confession, and the war would end in a corridor that no one would remember. But the bell kept working. So did I. I learned the details the way you learn a song when you have to pass an exam. The ceramic tiles lining the chamber, the thick ropes of cable, the lead glass screens no one trusted, the way Vice pinched the bridge of his nose when the field fluctuated, the way Richter's pen scratched most when he was lying to himself. They spoke of Kronos as if time were a mule you could bridle if you had the right bit. What they meant beneath all that was escape. When men say future, they often mean away. It took me 12 years to see the bell again.
"You've been invited to Moscow," he said.
Am I being arrested? I said, or courted?
"Neither," he said, "or both. The Russians have discovered something in Siberia and requested a liaison who specializes in phantoms. Apparently, that's you."
"Major Zoya Markova," she said. She shook my hand as if hands were for work. "You will call me Zoya. You will smoke if I smoke. You will not speak until I tell you to. If you touch anything without permission, I will have your fingers, and then we will begin to negotiate."
Daniel Keene, I said. I will avoid negotiation. You can prepare yourself for seeing a ghost, but a ghost that hasn't aged makes you consider your own face as a rumor.
"Do not touch," Zoya said quietly, though I had not moved. "Your eyes are enough for now."
It hasn't changed, I said.
"It fell out of the sky," she said. "We tracked it for 2 minutes on radar, and then it stopped being a thing that technology could see and became a thing that cooks and mechanics talk about at dinner. It landed like a careful thought. We can't open the hatch at the top, if it is one."
Who saw it open? I said.
"We did not need it to open."
Daniel Keene, he said in German as clean as a blade. "At last."
Zoya's eyes did not leave him. "Friend of yours?"
No, I said, his ghost.
Weiss smiled. "You were better as Dieter."
You were easier as a rumor, I said.
"It was never for war. Not primarily. War was a means to an end. I was a scientist before the party, and I remained a scientist after it. They believed because I could show them a lever. I used their belief as fuel. I did what men like me have always done when kings are the ones who pay for the candles.
You tried to leave Silesia with it. Where did you go?
Where one goes when the house is on fire. Out. Austria for a season. Then, further, when Austria became a sieve. I went where men like you did not think to look because you expected me to be vain. I am vain, Mr. Keene. I am not stupid."
"And this?" "We tracked your toy falling from nowhere. Where did you fall from?"
"From that which you do not allow yourselves to name. Not space. Not heaven. A fold.
You jumped, more than once.
And each time I arrived where I had already been judged, and always someone is waiting.
Who? Why?
Because I did what I did."
"What is that? Tell me."
On the 4th day, he asked to see the bell. "One more time," he said. "I will show you what you have and you can decide."
Zoya allowed it. I couldn't help but think maybe that would be a mistake. We walked him to the clearing in cuffs and a rope, like a man from a drawing come to life. The soldiers set their perimeter around the circle, with their rifles at the low ready. Not because rifles would help, but because rifles make a man believe in false hope. Up close, the bell was the same indifferent miracle it had always been. The same dull skin, the same metal lip, the same suggestion of an opening that never opened. He put his bound hands against it, and the hair on my arms rose as if someone had walked lightly on my grave.
"You will not stop me," he said to me. And it was not arrogance. It was a physics problem he had solved and checked twice. "And you will not own me."
"You're a small man in a coat," Zoya said. "The world is full of small men in coats."
He smiled as if finally something had gone as expected. "Watch."
He breathed differently. Men who have done a thing many times have a way of breathing just before they do it. He leaned his forehead to the bell's lip, a ridiculous, tender posture, as if a lover. The air tightened, the pressure, the pre-light, the taste of metal. Time did that blink, the one the room had done in Silesia. The world made room for an exit. In that heartbeat between blinks, the air seemed to fold in on itself, thickening just enough to stir a faint swirl of sickened yellow grass near the bell's base. A small, lean shape, already fading, slipped close to the metal. Fingers brushed something no one here could see, tucked it away, and vanished into the fold. The mist settled an instant too late, as if it, the bell, had been asked to keep a secret. He was not wrong. I could not stop him. But there are other kinds of stopping. Weiss, he would not have turned for the name alone. He would not have turned for a bullet. He turned because the voice I used was not the voice of Dieter or Daniel. It was the voice I had not let out of my chest since the day my father died. It was the voice a man uses when he has a single sentence left in them, and you should listen. Weiss, I said again. As the bell hummed, the soldiers' rifles zagged, and Zoya stood still as a brick. You can go wherever you want. It will be the same there.
He did not want to look at me. I saw the slight shake of his jaw that a man cannot control. Because I did what I did, he said without turning.
No, I said, because you won't own it.
The hum faltered. Not the machine, not the physics. The man. He opened his eyes, looked at me, and for a fraction of a second, his face was what it might have been if he'd been a teacher who touched his students' shoulders lightly when they solved a proof right. I killed them, he said. The sentence was soft as dust.
The hum died like a thought someone chose not to think. Zoya's mouth twitched. I did not breathe. Weiss took his hands from the bell as if he'd burned them. He did not try for it again. He sat down in the black grass with the care of an older man easing himself to a pier and watched a lake he didn't think was real. He looked smaller in his wrong coat. He looked like a man in a chair who had miscounted his coins and discovered mercy costs more than he thought. Zoya cuffed him. Weiss did not resist. When she stood, she tapped the bell with the back of her fingernail. The sound it made was nothing and everything. A dull, meaty thwack, like knocking a tongue against a tooth. It would not sing for anyone. The papers we wrote after that were a blend of lies and truths. Weiss officially died in a naval hospital, not a black ops hospital, where a fever climbed through his skin from the bell's radiation. The bell moved on flatbeds through night and snow to a building where no one used their names. I visited it once and put my hand on its dull metal, feeling exactly nothing. Years passed. I grew steady in the way men do when they have given their lives to one object they will never call a god. I retired in a way that had nothing to do with stopping. I planted tomatoes in a yard that had too much shade. I learned to drink tea because coffee had begun to turn me cruel. Sometimes when the house was very quiet, I heard a pressure build in the air, and I smiled without moving because I had learned to call many things by the names they deserved. The bell. When the Russians sent me a small parcel with a string around it and a seal, I didn't break it until I had washed my hands. I knew what would be inside before I opened it. A photograph, black and white, of a clearing with a circle of black and a bell that looked like a trick of light. A note in Zoya's hand that said, "You were right. It is the same everywhere." At the bottom of the box, wrapped in the care a grandmother gives a teacup, lay a small thing I did not expect. A coin, old and dull, flattened slightly at the rim, as if someone had pressed it between glass. On one face, an eagle I didn't recognize. On the other hand, a date, 1944. The metal smelled faintly, impossibly, of ozone after rain. I put the coin in a jar I kept hidden in the garage. I did not know why then. But after, when I had more years to hold than days to spend, I came to understand. There are debts we pay that no one counts for us. There are mercies we buy without a register. When I die, and I will, in a bed or a chair or the passenger seat of a car, while a light turns green, I hope the bell is somewhere in the dark, indifferent and quiet. I hope Weiss has found whatever room he deserves. I hope, if there is any justice at all, that isn't a machine, that a man can spend his life hunting, or a sound to be forgiven, not because he caught it, but because Weiss learned to own his deeds. I killed them, he said. I kept it, I say now. I kept the pressure, the room, the smell of metal. I kept the faces. I kept the coin. I keep everything. The jar in my garage is heavy. Sometimes, when the house is tranquil and the light looks like a glowing bell, I tap the glass of the jar with 2 fingers and listen to the coin settle. The sound is small, domestic, unimportant. the opposite of a myth. And if somewhere, in some fold, a machine shaped like a bell hums in a clearing and a man in a wrong coat reaches for it with his forehead against the metal, I hope the air tightens and he remembers the world he owes before the world makes room for him to go. Only then, if there is any mercy left in us that we can count on, will the pressure ease. Only then will the sound stop and become a door, opening at last onto a room where nothing is permanent, yet every man remembers exactly where to stand.